process, we have to look at how do we get there. Heaven is a wonderful place, the psalm goes with, filled with glory and grace. I want to see my Savior's face, for heaven is a wonderful place, except for what? How we get there. And that is the matter of death that we are struggling with and that we look at. And so we are beginning to see heaven and hell, a theology. We've looked at the reality of eternity. We've seen the reference data that I have given to you, the removal of paradise, and after that, the resurrection of Christ as he led captivity captive. And now we're going to look at reflections of glory. Reflections of glory. And we will begin in your outline that you have, and again, we will make the full outline available to you when we finish the study. The first point is a portrayal of death. When Del Flossenfeld, who was the founder of Life Action Ministries, was battling a rare brain tumor, the doctors assured him that in April he would be dead before Christmas. When interviewed, he said that he wanted to follow God so fully while he still had the strength, that when weakness came, he would be able to endure his suffering with confidence. And he gave this illustration. When you come home at night, he said, you manage to get around the house in darkness because you've been there so often in the light. And that is a good description. Perhaps why we do what we do on Wednesdays and Sundays. As we get to know and we become familiar with our Savior. As we get to understand the greatness of our God. And so that in the light of God's Word and the fellowship with God's people, when that inevitable time will come when darkness begins to fall in, we will still be able to make ourselves at home. And I think that is an important distinction to make. And in today's society, many people are making the wrong choice. Because they are making themselves at home not with God's people or with God's Word, but where? In the world. In the old spiritual, this world is not my home. It's still true. So as we look at this concept, we need to begin to look at our own lives also. For there is one thing that is undeniable in all of our lives, unless Jesus Christ comes back and calls us home to be with him, is that each one of us are going to face what? Death. We're going to face death. And sometimes that is a difficult topic. It is hard for us to think of. If you are younger here this evening, you don't think about it much. But if you are, some of us in our ages, we kind of are beginning to look at it as a friend. And it is something that we understand that we are on the very cusp of eternity. And in that, to help us understand that and to greet that, we need to make sure that we walk in the light. And then we can walk in the darkness when the time comes. So I ask this question, what are we to expect after we die? That's a good question. A lot of people are asking that, and there's been movies and books written and all sorts of these things. The first thing that we understand is that we do not want to go beyond the realm of biblical revelation. And I really don't care what people tell me they have experienced. I really don't want to hear that someone was on the operating table and they went up into the sky and saw a bright light and a wild rushing wind and then they came back. Because I don't believe that that is a biblical experience or explanation. Well, what do you say? Well, we don't need to go into that because it is all subjection on our part anyhow. And so we won't go there, but it is not a biblical response that has happened. The only biblical response is given to us in Luke chapter 16. And let's see how well you have followed along now. In Luke chapter 16, the problem is that Luke chapter 16 is what economy that we call it? It is the Old Testament economy. And in the Old Testament economy, which is the way that God has dealt with mankind, when people died, where did they go? They went to Sheol. And Sheol was the holding place of the dead. Luke chapter 16 is the evidence of that. And the holding place of the dead had two compartments. One was torment and torture, we call hell, and the other was Abraham's bosom, also known as paradise. And there was a great gulf fixed between the two. And as we have looked in our study, when Jesus Christ descended into the depths of the earth, he led captivity captive, and he brought the believers, Old Testament believers, out of Sheol, and they were with him in heaven at that time. So therefore now, when we die as believers in Jesus Christ, what happens to us? Absent from the body and present with the Lord. And in that we understand that it is a transition process that takes place. For those who have trusted in Jesus Christ as their personal Savior, your expectation is what? Heaven. We just have to understand that and rest in that. For those that die without Christ, their expectation is hell. And we've spent many weeks looking at that, so we're not going to discuss all of those things. But we do want to look at heaven. While relatives sorrow for you, and maybe they will be sitting here in these pews, and you will be up front or in the back or maybe somewhere else at that time, you will find yourself where? In heaven with new surroundings, and it will be so much different that you will not be able to understand it. But the amazing thing is you will still be you. I believe that at death you will enter heaven without a break in consciousness. Personhood, who we are, survives the death of the body. Just before Stephen died in Acts chapter 7, he said, Lord, receive my spirit. And death is a powerful business, but we just keep existing without interruption. We must be careful then, as we've talked, about not going beyond biblical revelation. First thing I want you to know, if you look on your outline, as we look at death and what happens to us after we die, it is a state of being. Luke chapter 16, verses 19 through 31, we exegeted this passage for you a couple of weeks ago. And we are used to talking about the differences there will be when we make our transition from earth to heaven. But there are similarities also. There is a continuity that will happen. For heaven is the earthly life of the believer. Without what? Without our body. Without what? What else? Sin. Without sin. What does sin do to us? It destroys us. It dumbs us down. It takes our joy, our hope, our vision, all of those things. And so you will be transformed and you will be in heaven without the burdens of this sin that we live in. And so everything will be new and fresh without hindrance. The amazing truth is that we will be there and we will be perfected. Because of that, notice, though, in chapter 16 of Luke, that the first thing that is mentioned for us, there will be recognition. There is recognition in the afterlife. This is one of the first questions people ask me, perhaps in a death situation or as we talk about. Will I recognize? Will I recognize my mother or my husband or my children? Will they recognize me? Well, we have seen that in this parable or story that is given to us, they did recognize one another. 1 minute after we die, what will we have? We will still have our memories, but what won't they be hindered with? Sin. And so we will be clearer and sharper in everything else. Let me ask you, who can give me the name of their kindergarten teacher? Never had? Oh, you're really old. They did that. so you go down and you start thinking, who are your kindergarten teacher, and what are your teachers down through all of the years that you had them? And I'm doing pretty good all the way down through maybe missed one or two in my elementary school. Then I asked my sister, and she could remember because she always covered it for me at that time in the process. But in that, you see, all of a sudden when we get to heaven, what? It will be clear. We won't have the barriers and the hindrances. We will be changed in our recognition. Death does not change what we know or who we are. Our personalities will go on. With the information that many of us have stored in our minds today and have what? Forgotten. And have forgotten. So I hope that I get to run business meetings in heaven so that I won't be able to remember all of your names when I look and have to recognize it and all of those things. You see, that is one of the differences that will be there. You will remember the things that happened in the past and more. Would you ever think that you might know less in heaven than what you know on earth? No. I think we will learn much more and we will remember much more in heaven. Matthew chapter 17. What chapter is that in the Bible? Matthew chapter 17. You know. Mount of Transfiguration. Mount of Transfiguration. What happened on the Mount of Transfiguration? Jesus Christ took 3 disciples up with him, and he revealed his glory. The Shekinah glory shone out. And who came and joined them? Moses and Elijah. And the disciples recognized them. Do you ever wonder how? They didn't have any pictures of them, did they? They didn't have iPads. There were no photographs. How would you recognize them? Because there was no way of transferring that picture. You do it because of Christ revealed it, increased knowledge and recognition. There were no name tags or introductions. I believe because of that, there will be an intuitive knowledge for our minds. And it will be released of all of the limitations that we have here on earth that sin has imposed upon them. And so, you will recognize people that you didn't know, but you will have that intuitive knowledge that is there because we will not be hindered or hampered by the sin. Bob?
We won't remember any offenses.
I don't believe we will remember offenses. Again, I'm careful not to say that because we don't have the biblical backing with that. Again, in heaven, you would think that that would not be the case. You would not remember sin. You would not remember those issues. They are removed. But your recognition and all of those things will be increased. And so, what would be a lovely, wonderful day in Wayne County in the summer of 2017? What's it going to be like in heaven? Yes. What would be an opportunity of enjoyment here on earth that is weighed down with sin? In heaven is going to be what? Glorious and wonderful and free. And so what we take for granted and sometimes we just walk through because of our increased knowledge and perception, heaven is just going to be amazing. So people that have gone there, they are rejoicing. They are rejoicing in the normal things that happen. They are rejoicing in the plan of God. They are rejoicing in the salvation of boys and girls in Bible school. And it is going to be a wonderful opportunity. Now, Christ made it rather clear that we would not sustain a family relationship in heaven. But again, we will still know family and friends and relationships in a different degree, which will be better. And we will be able to rejoice in that. Because some of us would love to spend eternity with our mates. Other people may not want to spend eternity with their mates, and some have said, well, Pastor, that means I'm going to. And I said, well, we'll talk about that some other time. But in that, it will be a wonderful perception and relationship that is not hindered and bound by sin. know and understand that we will not know everything. For such knowledge belongs only to whom? Only to God. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12, we shall know fully, and our desire to sin will no longer be a part of our being. There is a perfect recognition, first of all, in heaven. That's what it is going to become. Secondly, there is going to be a right response. There is going to be a right response. There will be perfect love. Can you imagine in Luke chapter 16 if the man that was spending eternity in hell, what was he concerned about? His family. And in the midst of that torment, that love was there. If you are in heaven, again, revitalized, that will be a perfect love. Your loved one who is in heaven continues to love, but it is fonder, sweeter, purer, as it is purified by God. Christ made it clear that we will rejoice in that together. Not only our love for family and friends and others, but our love for God will be intensified. And we will be able to see and experience that love back and forth in a new and wonderful way. When faith has given way to sight, we will love without distractions. I was reading my Bible this afternoon. Happened to be in Isaiah. You know, Isaiah, some of those chapters can get just a little, and I kept thinking, I gotta go back and read it because I got distracted. Oh, I gotta go back and read it because a bird flew by. And in that process, as we look at it, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to share God's word in the presence of God without distractions, without fatigue, and just to sit down and to revel in it, and to be able to say, great is thy faithfulness. You see, we will keep loving God and people with a perfect love free from sin. Perfect love and our responses and personal feelings will continue. Here it is. This is a tough one, so I want you to work on it with me. Think of your purest joy on earth. What is it that in your experience has given you just the greatest and grandest thing? Now, in our stages of life, that always changes, doesn't it? With that. I mean, and circumstances. But what is it that just really rings your bell? And it's like, wow. And think in heaven it's going to be what? Better. It's going to be intensified in that. Multiply that infinite number of times, and that is what heaven is going to be like. Psalm chapter 16, verse 11 says this, in thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand are pleasures evermore. Heaven will be completely different from anything that we can imagine. I have not seen, nor ear hath heard, the things that God hath prepared for them that love Jesus. But it is populated with our friends and our family, who are still the people that dwell here on earth. There will be a wonderful response of love and joy. Thirdly, we will deal with this later on in our study of heaven. There will be responsibilities. There will be responsibilities. Because, to be honest with you, my idea of heaven is not sitting on a cloud and strumming a harp. That might be Pastor Mark's, but that's not my idea of fun. In fact, I think that might be almost the other place if I had to do that and forever and ever and ever and ever in the process. I don't want to go to heaven and just sit around. Heaven will be a place of responsibility. And in that, we will be at rest, but it will not be inactivity. Someone has suggested that we will continue many of the same talents and interests and pursuits that we have here on earth, and the ones that we will enjoy. And we will be able to see them in their full glory. Alexander MacLaren, a great Scottish preacher, wrote saplings here, but we shall be transported into our heavenly soil to grow in God's light. Here our abilities are in blossom. They shall burst forth with fruits of greater beauty. Our death is but the passing from one degree of loving service to another. Our love for God will continue, but awaken with a new purity and purposefulness. So the first thing I want you to see is that death is a state of being. Next is the state of the body. Death is not only a state of being, but it is a state of body. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 is where I've asked you to turn, and we understand this. The question that should come to our minds, what are we going to look like, and what kind of body will we have in heaven? Because we know that our earthly body is what? It's corrupted. It's here. It's out there or wherever you are placed. And we know that at the time of the rapture, the resurrection from the dead will take place, and we will be reunited with our bodies. But what are believers doing in heaven now? What are they inhabiting? Is it Casper? Just is kind of floating around in the process? Let's look in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, when does that happen? At death. We have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Amen. So in that, we understand then that there is going to be some sort of heavenly body that God has what? Or designed, created for us, that will be a possession that we will receive. It is not just floating around in that point. Saints in heaven have a recognizable body that God has prepared for them. Again, believers go directly into the presence of Christ in death, and they are conscious of all of their faculties, and they will receive this heavenly body. Now, understand that each body that you have now has been what? Dissolved. It will be dissolved, but it is designed by whom? God. He created you and He designed you. But what happened with that creation? Yeah. Sin damaged it and you took charge of it. And probably some of us haven't done real good jobs with the bodies that we are carrying around at this point in time. But can you imagine if we are going to get to heaven and God is going to design a body for us? And God's wisdom and power and strength, that almost makes me want to go there now. Because I don't have to walk around in this failing, frail body. God has designed a body for us in the intermediate state. D.L. Moody said before he died on his deathbed, "Soon you will read in the papers that Moody is dead. Don't believe it. For in that moment I will be more alive than I have ever been." That's a good thought. Amen. And so as we sit here and as we properly mourn those that have passed away, they are more alive than they have ever been. And they are walking and talking and sharing with those that have gone on before. We need to understand that glorious truth in that. Now, we do not know exactly what kind of body we will have, but in that we will know that it is prepared by God, and our personalities will continue in that. I tend to think, again, I'll step away from the Scriptures, and this is my righteous supposition. I think that we are going to be pretty much what we are here, except without the damages and the hindrance of sin. I'm kind of telling the Lord when I get to heaven I'd like to be at least 6 foot, about 180, without quite the nose that I have at this time. But I think probably God's going to look at me and says, it really doesn't matter. Because in heaven, God looks on the heart, and man looks on the outward appearance. And whatever he does is going to be what? Good. And I think we will be recognized. Why do I say that? Again, I've used this in Sunday school class and sometimes in messages. Do we have any evidence of someone returning from the dead that was recognized? Well, besides Christ. Besides Lazarus. Someone that didn't have their body. Who? Yeah, one. Old Testament. Samuel. What happened to Samuel? Samuel died, and the witch of Endor called him up for Saul. And when he came up out of the grave, the witch of Endor what? Screamed and yelled and said, "Why are you doing this to me?" And Saul said, "Don't worry. It's all right. What's he look like?" And she explained it to him. And he said, you know what he said? It's Samuel. He was recognizable when he came up from the dead in him. And I don't believe that was his body that God had created, but I believe our spirits resemble who we are. So, here's the bad news. I'm probably not going to be 6 foot in heaven. It's probably not going to matter. We are to rest in the truth that God has prepared a body for us. And yet we still await our resurrected bodies when we will be reunited. That is where we will be, and then the resurrected state that is given to us. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 42 through 45. The problem that we face is that we are a spiritual and physical unity. And God has planned and intends to put us back together again. Although now the soul is separated from this literal body that is only temporary. For we know at the resurrection that we will be resurrected and we will be reunited together. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 42 through 44. I'll just give you the quick reading of it. 1 Corinthians 15, 42 through 44. The comparison is a seed that is planted. Corruption must put on what? Incorruption, verse 42. Like a seed that is sown in the ground, the continuity between the kernel and the stalk. The problem is that when a seed of corn comes up, it doesn't look like what? It doesn't look like what was planted. It's better, bigger. I believe that probably is a parallel that is given to us. It is sown in verse 43 in dishonor, and it is raised in what? In glory. Every dead body that is in this graveyard and graveyards throughout the world is a testimony of weakness and sin. And understand that we will be raised in power in the truth that is there in glory. We saw in weakness, verse 43, raised in power. We were sown a natural body and will be raised a spiritual body. There will be continuity with a difference, as we have been talking about. And in that, it will be there for all to see. Again, how do we look at this? Well, we would look perhaps at Christ's resurrection body. For he is the only one that has come with a resurrected body. Lazarus received his body, but it had not been glorified or changed. Yes, Mike?
John in Revelation saw the bodies of the old saints, didn't he? He wasn't all shook up about it.
No, not at all.
He was dressed in white.
Yes, and that might have been the glorified bodies that God had.
Bodies.
Yeah, but it's not their bodies yet because they haven't been resurrected. It would be the spiritual bodies in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1 that God had prepared. So as we look at this and understand very simply that there is a difference, but we will be able to recognize. Again, let's look at Christ very quickly. You want to quit, or should we want to just leave it? I need to finish just this section. Let's look at Christ. As we look at Christ, his resurrected body, because we will be like him, 1 John chapter 3, verse 2. And let's look. Did the disciples recognize Christ right away? No. Why not? Because he had a glorified body. And Why not? Because they were what? They were sinful men. They were sinful men that were doubting. They were sinful men that were emotional. They were sinful men that just didn't have the ability to recognize that. Until Jesus Christ what? Revealed himself to them. Whether it was the disciples on the road to Emmaus, whether it was Mary at the tomb, wherever it was, but then they did recognize him. For we know when they were out on the boat and Jesus Christ was on the shore and he was cooking breakfast for them, what did they say? It's the Master. They recognized him. So in that, there is a recognizable side to all of this. That is why I believe that we will still look similar to what we look like here on earth at that point. Now, what stage, what age, that's open for discussion and probably finding out when we step on the shores of glory. But secondly, along with that, if we understand that, Jesus Christ still had what in his hands? He had the scars and the nail prints in his hands. So that is perhaps an indication of what will be there. And in that, he was able to go from one place to another, what? Yeah, through walls, through doors, and boom, boom, boom. I think that is probably another aspect that will be there. So as we look at the revelations that God has given to us, just kind of put that together as we understand that. Sylvia.
When Lazarus was raised from the grave, he must have had a physical body because he died again.
Yes, he had his same old body. His body was not resurrected, glorified. That's the difference with that. All right, so here's the thought. Continuity with the difference. All right, as we have looked, state of being, state of body, the third one is, we're just going to have to stop here. The third one is the state of babies. What about babies that die? How does that fit in all of these things? We'll pick that up next week, all right? As we look at that. Maybe give you a reason to come back. We'll look at that and see. What does the Word say about babies? It's a point of controversy. And if you have questions, be ready for them. We will talk about that, and then we will continue on as time allows us. Father, thank you for your Word. Lord, what a wonderful truth of heaven that you have prepared for us. Lord, we are many times ungrateful in our response. For we simply go forth and we run back into sin. We fall. Father, may we keep our minds on you, our hearts centered where they need to be. May we walk in the light so when that time of darkness comes that it will be familiar. And we will simply step into glory with our Savior and with those that have gone on before. Encourage hearts tonight. In Jesus' name I ask.